Hi, Kira. Hi, Tess. Hi, Michael. Hi, James. Who else is with us today? Today we're reading another story from Frog and Toad Are Friends. This is the first book by Arnold Lobel, and he wrote the pictures, he drew the pictures, and he wrote the story. And there are three more books in this series. And each book has a number of stories inside of it. So we are reading the story called The Story. That's what it's called, The Story. One summer day, Frog was not feeling well. Toad said, "Frog, you are looking quite green." "But I always look green," said Frog. "I am a frog." "Today you look very green, even for a frog," said Toad. "Get into my bed and rest." Toad made Frog a cup of hot tea. Frog drank the hot tea. And then he said, "Tell me a story while I am resting." Here's a picture of Frog and Toad together. There's Toad in bed and Frog in bed, and he wants Toad to read him a story. Do you like to have a story read to you while you're in bed? Maybe this is a story I'm reading to you while you're in bed right now. "All right," said Toad. "Let me think of a story to tell you." Toad thought and thought, but he could not think of a story to tell Frog. "I will go out in the front porch and walk up and down," said Toad. "Perhaps that will help me think of a story." Toad walked up and down on the porch for a long time, but he could not think of a story to tell Frog. There he is. He's walking up and down on the porch. Can you see him there? Then Toad went into the house and stood on his head. "Why are you standing on your head?" asked Frog. "I hope that if I stand on my head, it will help me think of a story," said Toad. Toad stood on his head for a long time, but he could not think of a story to tell Frog. Here he is, he's upside down. There's Frog in bed. Then Toad poured a glass of water over his head. "Why are you pouring water over your head?" asked Frog. "I hope that if I pour water over my head, it will help me to think of a story," said Toad. Toad poured many glasses of water over his head, but he could not think of a story to tell Frog. He's pouring water all over himself. What a silly, silly Toad he is. Okay. Then Toad began to bang his head against the wall. "Why are you banging your head against the wall?" asked Frog. "I hope that if I bang my head against the wall hard enough, it will help me to think of a story," said Toad. Don't bang your head against a wall. Silly story. He's banging his head against the wall. "I am feeling much better now, Toad," said Frog. "I do not think I need a story anymore." "Then you get out of bed and let me get into it," said Toad, "because now I feel terrible." Oh, I did the voice wrong. Let me go back and read it again. "Then you get out of bed and let me get into it," said Toad, "because now I feel terrible." Frog said, "Would you like me to tell you a story, Toad?" "Yes," said Toad, "if you know one." So here they are. He was banging his head against the wall, and now he's going to get back into bed because after all that head banging and pouring water, probably has a headache. "Once upon a time," said Frog, "there were two good friends, a frog and a toad. The frog was not feeling well. He asked his friend the toad to tell him a story. The toad could not think of a story. He walked up and down on the porch, but he could not think of a story. He stood on his head, but he could not think of a story. He poured water over his head, but he could not think of a story. He banged his head against the wall, but he still could not think of a story. Then the toad did not feel so well, and the frog was feeling better. So the toad went to bed, and the frog got up and told him a story. The end." "How was that?" said Frog. But Toad did not answer. He had fallen asleep. There he is, resting asleep after all of his silly things that he tried to do to get to think of a story. And that is called The Story. And it's in this book, Frog and Toad Are Friends. Frog and Toad Are Friends by Arnold Lobel. These are very, very well-loved books. They have been around for 50 years, and they are still read by children today. So I hope you enjoyed this. Bye, everybody.